Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something serious today. Your life, your dignity, and your future. When you find yourself at a crossroads in a relationship and you're wondering whether you should give your partner another chance, remember this. Human beings reveal who they truly are through repeated patterns, not isolated mistakes. If someone has violated your trust not once, not twice, but through 5 distinct actions, you are not dealing with an accident. You are dealing with a blueprint of their behavior. Trust is one of the most fundamental aspects of any relationship. It is not something that is simply given. It is something that is carefully built, nurtured, and most importantly, earned. People often assume that love alone is enough to sustain a relationship, but this is a grave misunderstanding. Love without trust is chaos. It is anxiety. It is an emotional roller coaster where you are constantly second-guessing the very foundation upon which your connection is supposed to stand. When trust is broken once, there is a case to be made for redemption. People make mistakes. People act out of ignorance, fear, or even self-sabotage. A one-time failure followed by genuine remorse and effort can be corrected. But when trust is broken multiple times, when it has been trampled on repeatedly, it is no longer a simple mistake. It is a choice. It is a reflection of the other person's true nature, and perhaps more alarmingly, it is a reflection of your own willingness to tolerate being mistreated. There is an illusion many people live under when they continuously give second chances. They tell themselves that their partner will change, that this time will be different, that love can somehow overwrite character. But the truth is far harsher. If someone has hurt you not once, not twice, but through 5 distinct violations of trust, they are no longer making a mistake. They are showing you exactly who they are. At this point, the betrayal is not just theirs. It is yours. Against yourself. Because each time you forgive without real consequence, you are reinforcing their behavior. You are teaching them that they can wound you and still have access to you. You are signaling that you are willing to tolerate repeated harm. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored. And yet, many people have an endless reservoir of forgiveness for those who hurt them the most. Why? Because they fear the alternative. They fear walking away. They fear the loneliness that might come after the breakup, the void that might consume them, the uncertainty of what life will look like without the person they have spent so much time investing in. This fear is powerful, but it is also deceptive, because staying in a relationship where your trust is continuously violated does not protect you from suffering. It guarantees it. It locks you into a cycle of pain, where you are always waiting for the next betrayal, always questioning whether what you are being told is the truth, always living with the burden of uncertainty. And what kind of life is that? What kind of love is that? Many people who give repeated chances believe they are being compassionate. They believe they are showing strength, patience, and understanding. But true compassion is not enabling destructive behavior. True compassion is recognizing when someone is incapable of valuing you properly and choosing to value yourself enough to walk away. You are not being kind by allowing someone to repeatedly break your trust. You are being complicit in your own suffering. Trust, when respected, creates stability, security, and growth. But when trust is broken, it creates doubt, fear, and emotional exhaustion. If you find yourself in a position where your partner has broken your trust 5 times, you must stop and ask yourself, are you giving them another chance because they deserve it, or because you are afraid to enforce consequences? If the answer is the latter, then the problem is no longer just their actions. It is your unwillingness to demand better for yourself. The hard truth is that people do not change unless they are forced to. They do not suddenly wake up one day and become trustworthy after repeatedly violating that trust. They do not become honest just because you continue to believe in them. If change were that easy, they would not have betrayed you 5 times. And if they have done so, the likelihood that they will continue to do so is astronomically high. The only thing that stops bad behavior is consequences, real consequence. And sometimes the only consequence strong enough to make an impact is walking away entirely. You must understand that trust is not an infinite resource. It is not something that can be given endlessly without diminishing in value. Every time it is broken, it takes longer to rebuild. And after enough violations, it becomes impossible to restore. A relationship without trust is a relationship in name only. It is a performance, an illusion, an exhausting act of pretending that things are okay when they are not. So, if your partner has broken your trust 5 times, the decision is no longer about them. It is about you. Do you continue to live in a reality where deception, betrayal, and uncertainty are part of your everyday existence? Or do you reclaim your self-respect and remove yourself from a situation that is actively harming you? This is not about bitterness. It is not about revenge. It is about understanding your own worth and refusing to settle for anything less than a relationship built on mutual respect, honesty, and integrity. If you give someone 5 chances, what you are really doing is giving them permission. You are communicating to them, whether you realize it or not, that they can continue to betray you and you will still be there. And that is not love. That is self-abandonment. That is a failure to protect yourself. That is a slow erosion of your own dignity. Trust is earned, not given, repeatedly, without question. It is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. And once it is destroyed beyond repair, no amount of love can compensate for its absence. Love without trust is manipulation. It is suffering. It is a trap. And the only way to escape it is to recognize that trust, once shattered multiple times, is no longer trust at all. It is just an illusion you are desperately trying to hold on to. People like to believe in second chances. They convince themselves that one mistake does not define a person and that everyone deserves an opportunity to make things right. And in some cases, this is true. A single mistake can be a lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness, or even the result of circumstances that do not reflect a person's true character. But when someone betrays you 5 times, you are no longer looking at a mistake, you are looking at a pattern. And patterns are far more dangerous than isolated incidents because they tell you something fundamental about a person's nature, their values, and their respect for you. A pattern of betrayal means that this behavior is not accidental. It is a reflection of who they are. When someone lies, cheats, manipulates, or disregards your trust repeatedly, they are not making mistakes. They are demonstrating a consistent mode of operation. They are showing you that their words mean nothing and that their actions will always contradict their promises. At that point, it is no longer about whether they will change. It is about whether you will continue to ignore what is right in front of you. Human beings are creatures of habit. We do not act in random, unpredictable ways. The decisions we make are often reflective of deeper beliefs, unconscious patterns, and ingrained behaviors. If a person betrays you once, there may be some merit in believing it was unintended. If they betray you twice, you should start paying attention. But if it happens 5 times, it is no longer an accident. It is no longer a moment of weakness. It is a choice. And that choice reveals something you must not ignore. This person does not value you enough to stop hurting you. People who act in repeated patterns do so because they do not fear consequences. They know that they can apologize, say the right things, and manipulate emotions to convince you to stay. They rely on your forgiveness. They count on your ability to see the best in them. And as long as you continue to give them chances, they will continue to take advantage of them. This is not because they are incapable of change, but because they have no incentive to change. Why would they? If they can betray you and still have access to you, then in their mind, they have done nothing truly wrong. A common mistake people make is believing that love is enough to justify staying in a toxic pattern. They think if they truly love me, they will change. But love alone does not change people. Consequences do. Suffering does. The realization that their actions have led to an irreversible loss does. If a person has betrayed you 5 times, it is because they do not take your pain seriously. Your words, your hurt, and your disappointment do not outweigh their selfish impulses. They know exactly what they are doing, and they also know that you will continue to tolerate it. The most dangerous thing you can do in a relationship is ignore a pattern. Because once you justify bad behavior once, it becomes easier to justify it again. You tell yourself it was just a mistake, then they didn't mean it, then this time will be different, and before you realize it, you are caught in an endless cycle of betrayal, forgiveness, and false hope. But the truth is, there is no hope in a relationship where one person continuously disrespects the other. There is only denial. Denial is what keeps people trapped in toxic dynamics. It convinces them that the past does not predict the future, that this time will be different, that change is always possible. But while change is possible, it is also rare. It requires deep self-reflection, genuine remorse, and a commitment to personal growth. And more importantly, it requires suffering. Most people do not change unless they are forced to, unless they feel the weight of their actions, unless they experience the loss of what they took for granted, they will continue behaving in the same way. If your partner has broken your trust 5 times and still expects forgiveness, it is because they have never truly suffered the consequences of their actions. At some point, you must ask yourself, what is my limit? If 5 betrayals are not enough to walk away, then what is? 6, 10, a lifetime? And if you allow this pattern to continue, what does that say about the way you value yourself? Because every time you accept betrayal without consequence, you are not just reinforcing their behavior, you are diminishing your own self-worth. You are sending a message not only to them but to yourself that you are willing to be mistreated. And once that message is internalized, it becomes harder and harder to break free. The only way to escape this cycle is to recognize that patterns do not lie. They are the clearest indicator of a person's character. Words can deceive, apologies can manipulate, but repeated actions tell you everything you need to know. And if those actions consistently show betrayal, dishonesty, or disrespect, then staying in that relationship is not an act of love. It is an act of self-abandonment. It is easy to hope for change. It is easy to believe in the potential of someone you care about. But at some point, you must confront reality. People show you who they are through their patterns, not their promises. And if someone has hurt you 5 times, then they will do it again. The only question left is whether you will allow it. Self-respect is the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships are built. It dictates how you allow yourself to be treated, the boundaries you set, and the standards you uphold. Without it, you become vulnerable to manipulation, mistreatment, and emotional suffering. Many people stay in relationships where they are repeatedly hurt because they prioritize their emotions over their dignity. They believe that love should be unconditional, that patience will eventually lead to change, and that their partner's potential is more important than their current reality. But the harsh truth is this: if you do not respect yourself, neither will your partner. And if someone has hurt you 5 times, your decision to stay is not just about them anymore. It is about you and your unwillingness to demand better for yourself. People often mistake endurance for strength. They think that staying through hardship, forgiving betrayal, and giving endless chances is a sign of emotional fortitude. But true strength is not found in how much suffering you can endure. It is found in your ability to walk away when your dignity is at stake. There is nothing noble about tolerating repeated disrespect. There is no honor in allowing someone to diminish your worth. Every time you excuse behavior that violates your trust, you are making a silent agreement that you are willing to be treated this way. And the longer you stay, the more you reinforce this agreement. A person who truly loves and respects you will not require endless forgiveness. They will not repeatedly test the limits of your patience. When someone values you, they fear losing you. They understand that their actions have consequences and they work to ensure that their behavior aligns with their words. But when someone betrays you 5 times, they are demonstrating that your presence in their life is not a privilege they feel the need to protect. They know that no matter what they do, you will still be there. And that knowledge removes any urgency for them to change. The problem is not just the betrayal itself. It is what the betrayal does to you over time. When you allow yourself to be mistreated repeatedly, your sense of self-worth begins to erode. You start to internalize the idea that this is what you deserve, that this is the best you can get, that walking away is either impossible or unnecessary. You convince yourself that if you were better, if you were more patient, if you just loved harder, then maybe things would improve. But this is an illusion, because the issue is not your effort, the issue is the other person's character. And no amount of love can fix a person who does not respect you. The real question you must ask yourself is this: if someone else came to you with your exact situation, if they told you their partner had hurt them 5 times and asked for advice, what would you say? You would likely tell them to leave, to value themselves, to stop tolerating a cycle of betrayal. You would remind them that they deserve better, that no one should have to beg for basic respect. So why is it so hard to take your own advice? The answer is simple. Emotions cloud judgment. When you are deeply invested in someone, your logic becomes secondary to your feelings. You rationalize, you excuse, you hold on to memories instead of reality. But just because your emotions tell you to stay does not mean it is the right decision. Respect is not just something you demand from others, it is something you must first demand from yourself. If you respect yourself, you will not tolerate repeated betrayal. If you respect yourself, you will set boundaries and enforce them without fear. If you respect yourself, you will understand that love should not come at the cost of your dignity. And if someone is incapable of treating you with the respect you deserve, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Many people stay in toxic relationships because they are afraid of being alone. They convince themselves that even a broken relationship is better than no relationship at all. But this is a lie that keeps people trapped in misery. Being alone is not nearly as painful as staying with someone who repeatedly disrespects you. There is nothing lonelier than lying next to someone you no longer trust, waiting for the next betrayal, knowing deep down that they will hurt you again. True loneliness is not the absence of a relationship. It is the presence of one that makes you feel small, insignificant, and undeserving of love. It is easy to say that you want respect, but the real question is whether you are willing to do what it takes to earn it. Because respect is not given to those who beg for it. It is not given to those who tolerate mistreatment in the hopes that things will change. It is given to those who refuse to accept anything less than what they deserve. If you stay in a situation where your trust has been broken 5 times, you are not being patient. You are being complicit in your own suffering. The decision to leave is not just about ending a relationship. It is about reclaiming your sense of self. It is about proving to yourself that you are worthy of something better. It is about breaking the cycle before it breaks you. And it is about understanding that self-respect is not just a concept. It is a choice you make every single day, a choice to stand up for yourself, to refuse to settle, and to walk away from anyone who fails to see your worth. If someone has betrayed you 5 times, the problem is no longer just them, it is your willingness to let it continue. And until you decide that your self-respect is more important than your attachment, nothing will change. The moment you recognize your worth is the moment you set yourself free. Apologies are easy to give. They require nothing but words, simple sentences strung together to produce the illusion of remorse. But words alone do not rebuild broken trust, nor do they erase repeated betrayal. True change requires effort, discipline, and a deep willingness to confront one's flaws. It is not a matter of saying I'm sorry, but of demonstrating through consistent actions that the mistake will never happen again. And yet people continue to fall for apologies as if they hold any real weight without proof of transformation. This is the fundamental mistake that keeps individuals trapped in cycles of disappointment. They confuse regret with change. They assume that because someone feels bad, they must also be willing to improve. But feelings are fleeting, and without action, they mean absolutely nothing. A person who has betrayed you 5 times is not someone who is struggling to change. They are someone who has no real intention of changing at all. If they did, they would have done so after the first betrayal, or the second, or the third. The fact that they have repeatedly broken your trust is all the evidence you need that their apologies are empty, their promises are worthless, and their so-called remorse is nothing more than a tactic to keep you around. Because if they truly understood the damage they were causing, if they genuinely cared about the pain they inflicted, they would have stopped long before reaching this point. True change is difficult. It requires a person to face their own flaws, acknowledge their shortcomings, and put in the necessary work to become better. And that work is not instantaneous. It does not happen overnight. It is a slow, painful process that involves self-reflection, discipline, and a complete shift in behavior. It is not enough for someone to simply say they will change. They must show it repeatedly through their actions. They must be willing to endure discomfort, to accept responsibility, and to put in the effort required to rebuild what they have broken. And most importantly, they must do this not because they fear losing you, but because they recognize the fundamental wrongness of their actions and are committed to becoming a better person. The problem with repeatedly forgiving someone who has not changed is that it removes their incentive to do so. If they can betray you 5 times and still have access to you, then what motivation do they have to stop? Why should they put in the effort to improve when they know that no matter what, you will still be there? By accepting apologies without evidence of change, you are teaching them that their behavior has no real consequences. You are allowing them to believe that their words are enough, that their remorse is sufficient, and that they can continue their pattern of betrayal without truly losing anything. And yet, people hold on to hope. They convince themselves that, despite all evidence to the contrary, their partner will eventually change. They believe that this time, the apology is different, that this time, things will be better. But hope, when misplaced, is nothing more than self-deception. It is a way of avoiding reality, of clinging to the idea that things will improve without requiring any real evidence. But the truth is simple. If someone has hurt you 5 times, the only pattern you should believe in is the one they have already demonstrated, not the one they promise for the future. The harsh reality is that most people do not change unless they are forced to. Unless they are faced with real consequences, losing something they truly value, experiencing genuine hardship, or being forced to confront the depth of their failures, they will continue doing what is easiest. And what is easiest is making excuses, offering empty apologies, and relying on your willingness to forgive. As long as they have a way to avoid discomfort, they will take it. Change only happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of transformation. And if they have betrayed you 5 times, and still have not changed, then clearly they have not yet experienced the necessary discomfort to push them toward real improvement. So what does that mean for you? It means that your role in this situation is no longer to hope, to wait, or to believe in empty words. Your role is to enforce consequences, to stop accepting apologies without action, to recognize that real change is proven, not promised, and to understand that walking away is not just an act of self-respect. It is the only way to force a person to truly confront their own behavior. If they care about you, if they truly value your presence in their life, then losing you will be the wake-up call they need. And if it is not, then that is all the proof you require that they were never going to change in the first place. Either way, the answer is clear. Staying and hoping will not lead to transformation. Only distance, loss, and genuine accountability have the power to do that. At some point, you must decide whether you want to continue believing in words or whether you are willing to demand evidence. Because without proof, without sustained and visible effort, an apology is nothing more than a temporary bandage over a wound that will continue to reopen. And if someone has betrayed you 5 times, then what you are looking at is not a wound that needs healing, but a pattern that needs breaking. The only question that remains is whether you are brave enough to break it. The way you allow yourself to be treated sets the standard for every relationship in your life. Whether you realize it or not, you are teaching people how to treat you by what you tolerate, what you forgive, and what you walk away from. When someone betrays you 5 times and you continue to stay, you are sending a message both to them and to yourself that your boundaries are flexible, that your self-worth is negotiable, and that their behavior is acceptable. And the more you allow it, the harder it becomes to demand better. People often believe that their situation is unique, that their love story is different, that there are complexities no outsider could possibly understand. But the truth is, patterns of betrayal and manipulation follow the same basic principles. When a person repeatedly disrespects your trust, they are doing so because they do not fear losing you. They know that they can hurt you and you will still be there. That knowledge gives them power. Power to continue lying, to continue cheating, to continue disregarding your feelings without consequence. And once a person realizes they have that power over you, they will use it again and again. Every relationship operates on an unspoken set of rules. These rules dictate what is acceptable and what is not, what will be tolerated and what will lead to consequences. The problem is that most people do not consciously establish these rules. They allow them to be dictated by their emotional reactions rather than by clear, unwavering boundaries. And when emotions take precedence over self-respect, the result is always the same: a cycle of betrayal, apology, reconciliation, and repeated betrayal. At its core, this is a question of power. A healthy relationship is one in which both individuals hold equal power. The power to set boundaries, to communicate needs, and to expect respect. But when one person repeatedly betrays the other without consequence, the balance shifts. The betrayer holds all the power because they know they can continue their behavior without truly suffering for it. The betrayed, on the other hand, becomes trapped in a cycle of forgiving, hoping, and waiting for change that will never come. Many people believe that if they stay long enough, if they love hard enough, they can eventually make their partners see their worth. They think that their patience and resilience will serve as proof of their value. But this belief is fundamentally flawed. People do not respect those who tolerate endless mistreatment. They respect those who demand better for themselves. If someone can betray you 5 times and still have access to your love, your time, and your energy, then in their mind, they have already won. They do not need to change because they have everything they want without the effort of becoming better. This is why leaving is not just an act of self-preservation. It is an act of reclaiming your power. It is a declaration that you are no longer willing to be a participant in your own suffering. It is the recognition that love without respect is meaningless, because true love is not found in the number of chances you give someone. It is found in the ability to walk away when your dignity is at stake. The longer you stay in a toxic relationship, the more you normalize the mistreatment. What once felt unacceptable begins to feel inevitable. The lines between right and wrong become blurred. You start to justify behaviors that in any other context you would immediately recognize as unacceptable. And the most dangerous part, you begin to believe that this is what you deserve. Over time, repeated betrayal does not just affect your relationship, it affects your sense of self. It changes the way you see yourself, the way you value yourself, and the way you approach future relationships. If you allow one person to break you down, you carry those wounds forward, making it even harder to demand respect from others in the future. This is why it is crucial to break the cycle now, not just for this relationship, but for every relationship that follows. Walking away is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is the single greatest act of strength you can show, not just to your partner, but to yourself. It is a statement that you refuse to be part of a relationship where your trust is disposable, where your boundaries are ignored, and where your self-worth is diminished. And once you make that choice, something remarkable happens. You begin to heal. You begin to see yourself not as someone who was abandoned, but as someone who chose themselves over suffering. There's a profound difference between losing someone and freeing yourself from them. Loss implies that something valuable was taken from you. Freedom means that you removed yourself from something that was hurting you. And when someone has betrayed you 5 times, the reality is clear. Staying is not about love anymore. It is about fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of admitting that you invested in something that was never going to work. But none of these fears outweigh the cost of staying in a situation that slowly destroys you. The truth is simple. You are not responsible for fixing someone who repeatedly breaks you. You are not obligated to keep proving your worth to someone who refuses to see it. And you do not have to stay in a relationship where betrayal is a pattern rather than a mistake. The moment you realize this, you take back the power that was slowly taken from you. And in that moment, you do not just leave a toxic relationship. You step into a life where you are valued, respected, and truly free. The essence of this entire message is simple yet profound. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. When betrayal becomes a pattern, it is no longer a mistake. It is a reflection of the other person's character and your willingness to endure mistreatment. Love without respect is meaningless. Apologies without change are empty. And staying in a situation that erodes your self-worth is not an act of patience or resilience. It is an act of self-betrayal. If someone has hurt you 5 times, they have shown you exactly who they are. And if you stay, you are showing them that their actions have no real consequences. At some point, you must recognize that waiting, hoping, and forgiving without results is not love. It is self-sacrifice at the cost of your dignity. The person who truly values you will not require endless chances. They will not make you beg for respect. They will not see your love as an opportunity to manipulate, but as something sacred to be cherished. Walking away is not weakness. It is an act of reclaiming your power. It is the decision to value yourself enough to refuse mistreatment. It is the realization that you are not responsible for fixing someone who repeatedly breaks you. Because the harsh truth is this: the more you tolerate, the less they respect you. And the moment you decide that your self-respect is more important than your attachment is the moment you set yourself free. You do not lose anything by leaving a toxic relationship. You gain everything: your dignity, your peace, your future. And in that moment, you are no longer just a person who is betrayed. You are someone who chose themselves. And that is the most powerful decision you will ever make.